The clock struck midnight, but the silence in the mansion felt louder than ever. Miles Turner stood by the window, staring out over the city lights of Los Angeles. He wasn't looking at the skyline, he was trying to ignore the gnawing emptiness in his chest. He had it all. The wealth. The power. The influence. But what was the point of it all if you had no one to share it with? The quiet sobs of his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, echoed from down the hallway, breaking his thoughts. She had been crying for hours, but no one dared to comfort her, except him. And he didn't know how. His heart ached with the weight of guilt. His wife, the love of his life, had died in a car accident just 6 months ago, and since then, Lily had only grown quieter, more withdrawn. Miles rubbed his eyes. The house was empty without her. And he had no idea how to fill the void. But tonight was different. The women were here. He hadn't expected to do this. He hadn't planned for it. But when his therapist suggested that it was time for Lily to have a new mother, the idea had seemed ridiculous at first. How could anyone replace Emily? How could anyone step into the shoes of a woman who had loved him and Lily so deeply? Yet here they were. 5 women, each perfect in her own way, waiting for the chance to become a part of his family. But none of them were really here for Lily. No. They were here for him. And that was the problem. His gaze shifted to the table. There, in front of him, were the names, the profiles, the polished lives of women who had everything. Money. Fame. Success. But none of them had what Lily needed. None of them had the one thing that mattered most, genuine love. He could hear their laughter from the next room as they sipped champagne, trying to pretend that this was just another social event. He could already picture them. Claire, the doctor, always calculating. Sarah, the entrepreneur, focused on her empire. Miranda, the media mogul, obsessed with perfection. And Olivia, the designer, charming yet distant. They all looked like they belonged, like they were born to be in this world. The world Miles had built. But none of them belonged in his family. None of them truly cared about Lily. The real problem? There was one woman who wasn't on the list. One woman who wasn't competing for his affection, yet who already had a special place in his daughter's heart. Her name was Sasha Clark. The sound of a doorbell startled him. Miles took a deep breath, shaking his head. Time to face it. He opened the door and stepped into the grand hallway where the women had gathered. Each one of them turned their heads when they saw him, smiling in a way that felt rehearsed. But then, there was a different sound. The quiet, steady footsteps of someone who didn't care for the gold-trimmed elegance. Sasha Clark walked into the room, wearing her usual uniform, a simple black jacket and khakis. Her presence contrasted with the glimmering luxury that surrounded her, yet there was something about her that couldn't be ignored. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She wasn't trying to win a competition. She wasn't here to play a game. She was here because she cared about Lily. And that made all the difference. Lily had met Sasha when she got lost near the park. Sasha was the building security guard for the complex, and when Lily had wandered off, Sasha found her and made sure she got home safely. In the weeks since, their bond had grown. Sasha didn't care about Miles' wealth. She didn't care about how much power he held. All she cared about was making sure Lily was okay. That made Miles uneasy. How was it that someone who wasn't trying to impress his daughter, someone who wasn't focused on him, could become the one person Lily turned to for comfort? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. But it had. As Sasha stood there in the doorway, the other women exchanged glances, some with visible disdain, others with confusion. Sasha was out of place in their world. They had money, education, and pedigree. She had none of those things. You must be the help, Claire said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What a surprise. Sasha didn't flinch. She simply smiled and nodded. Miles watched closely. He hadn't anticipated this. He knew they'd be uncomfortable with her presence, but it was different when he saw it in person. It wasn't just disdain, it was a calculated attempt to diminish her, to make her seem insignificant. To make her less than. But Lily wasn't fooled. Miles glanced toward the staircase as Lily appeared, her small frame silhouetted in the doorway. She held a stuffed animal tightly in her arms, her face unreadable. The room fell silent. The tension between the women grew palpable. They all wanted to be the one Lily would turn to. They all wanted to be her new mother. But the question remained, who would Lily choose? Without a word, Lily walked past the group, her eyes locked on Sasha. She didn't care about the stares or the judgment. She didn't care about the women dressed in designer clothes, their polished appearances. She went straight to Sasha, her face lighting up. Sasha crouched down and wrapped her arms around Lily, holding her close, whispering something in her ear. Miles could only watch as he felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Why did this feel so wrong? The women, still watching, waited for something to happen. But nothing did. Sasha was already the one Lily needed. That moment, like a spark to dry tinder, ignited a fire in the room. The next few days were filled with whispers and side glances. The women were starting to turn their attention away from impressing Lily and focusing more on getting rid of Sasha. They were experts at this, charming, persuasive, manipulative. But they weren't prepared for Lily's resolve. And they certainly weren't prepared for what would come next. The battle lines had been drawn. The women would do anything to win. They had money, connections, and power. But Sasha had something they didn't. Sasha had Lily's heart. The next morning was filled with a tense quiet that had taken over the Turner mansion. Miles sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee, trying to block out the weight of what had transpired the night before. Sasha's presence lingered in his mind like an unwanted guest, but the truth was undeniable, Lily had chosen her. The air in the house was thick with the undercurrent of competition. The women hadn't been subtle. They had spent the night whispering in corners, casting glances at each other that felt more like calculated moves than casual interactions. They weren't here for Lily. They were here for Miles. And Miles could feel it in his bones. But it was too late now. He had opened Pandora's box, and the real challenge had just begun. It was Sarah who struck first. She approached Miles in his office that afternoon under the guise of a casual conversation. Her words were measured, and her tone was sweet, but there was an edge to them that Miles couldn't ignore. She was careful, not directly insulting Sasha, but rather planting seeds of doubt. "She's not exactly what we expected, is she?" Sarah's voice dripped with feigned concern. "I mean, you're making a decision that will affect Lily's future. You want someone who's equipped to guide her, not just care for her, right?" Miles frowned, sensing the manipulation behind her calm demeanor. But he didn't respond immediately. He needed to know just how far Sarah, and the others, would go. "I've seen the way she interacts with Lily," Miles said, his voice tight with restraint. "Sasha cares for her. She's been there for her when we were all too caught up in our own lives to notice." Sarah's expression faltered for a split second, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Of course. But, Miles, Lily needs more than someone who simply cares. She needs someone who can offer guidance, education, stability. Sasha, well, she doesn't seem to have those things." Her words were smooth, like a well-rehearsed performance. But Miles wasn't fooled. Meanwhile, Sasha was unaware of the undercurrents stirring around her. She was used to being looked down upon. It wasn't the first time she had been judged because of her job or her background, but this felt different. She had been in the presence of rich people before, but this was a competition, a game she hadn't even signed up for. Yet, she couldn't help the nagging feeling in her gut that the women would try to sabotage her. Sasha met Lily in the garden later that day. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the flowers. Lily sat on the edge of a flower bed, her small hands gently tracing the petals. "Hey, you okay?" Sasha asked, crouching down beside her. Lily nodded but didn't look up. "Why are they so mean to you, Sasha? They don't like you." Sasha's heart ached at the innocence in Lily's voice. It broke her every time the little girl mentioned the tension between the women and her. "They're just not used to someone like me," Sasha replied gently, her voice steady. "But that doesn't mean they know what's best for you. You know that, right?" Lily finally looked up, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But I want you to stay. I don't want them to win." Sasha smiled softly, her heart swelling. "I'm not going anywhere, kiddo. As long as you need me, I'll be here." But even as she said the words, Sasha knew that the storm was just beginning. And the women wouldn't stop until they had taken everything away from her, everything she had worked so hard for. That evening, as Miles prepared for the final round of interviews with the women, the others were already plotting. Claire, Sarah, Miranda, and Olivia had started to strategize. They were no longer concerned with winning his affection. Now, it was about ensuring Sasha was removed from the equation entirely. "I don't care what we have to do," Claire said, her voice steely. "We can't let her get close to Lily. We need to make it clear that she's not fit for this family." Olivia, the quietest of the group, nodded. "We can create a few incidents. A little discrediting here and there. We'll make sure she's out." Miranda, always the more direct one, leaned forward. "We need a plan that will stick. Nothing too obvious. Just enough to plant doubt." They weren't going to play fair. Miles had unknowingly opened the door to a war. As the days went on, Sasha began to sense that something was off. The tension from the other women was becoming palpable, and she started noticing small things, offhand comments, strange glances, whispers when she entered the room. But she wasn't going to back down. Sasha had spent her whole life fighting for respect, for a place at the table. She wasn't about to let a group of privileged women push her out. It was during one of the dinners at the mansion when everything started to unravel. Sasha had just sat down when Sarah, with a pleasant smile, casually remarked, "It must be tough, working as a security guard, always looking over your shoulder. I mean, how do you ever relax?" It was a subtle jab. But it stung. Sasha forced a smile, not wanting to give them the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. "Well," she said, keeping her tone level, "when you've been through as much as I have, you learn to stay calm. You learn that what really matters is right in front of you. And I'm here for Lily. No one can take that away from me." There was a brief silence. The women exchanged glances, trying to gauge her reaction. Sasha had made it clear that she wasn't intimidated. But she knew this was only the beginning. The women would keep testing her, keep trying to push her out of the picture. And Miles? He was still torn. He had seen how good Sasha was with Lily. But he couldn't ignore the fact that the women had been in his life for so much longer. Later that night, after the dinner, Miles sat alone in his office, thinking about everything that had happened. He couldn't deny the connection between Sasha and Lily. But could Sasha really handle the responsibility? Was she really equipped to step into the role of a mother, to take Emily's place? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. "Dad?" It was Lily. She walked in with that look on her face, half confused, half sad. "Hey, sweetheart. What's wrong? I don't like the way they look at Sasha. They say things about her when you're not around," Lily said, her voice shaky. "It's not fair." Miles felt his heart drop. He knew it was coming. He just didn't know it would hit this close to home. "Lily," he said, kneeling down to meet her eyes. "What do you want? Who do you want to stay with us?" Lily didn't hesitate. "Sasha. I want her to stay. She makes me feel safe." Miles swallowed hard. He had his answer. But could he make the right choice? Could he stand up against everything the women were throwing at him? He wasn't sure. But for the first time in a long while, he knew what his heart was telling him. The next few days were filled with strained conversations and awkward glances. Miles could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him as the women grew more desperate. They had already begun to see Sasha as a threat, and they would stop at nothing to push her out of the picture. One evening, as Sasha was sitting with Lily in the garden, Claire approached Miles at the bar. She wasn't subtle about her intentions. The way she stood there, all too perfect, made Miles feel uneasy. "David," she began, using his first name with a certain air of familiarity, "I know you're trying to do what's best for Lily, but you're taking a huge risk with Sasha. Do you really think she's equipped to be the kind of role model your daughter needs?" Miles raised an eyebrow but didn't respond immediately. Claire's words were clever. She was always good at planting seeds of doubt, especially in his mind. "I understand where you're coming from," Claire continued. "But a woman like Sasha, she's not going to be able to give Lily what she deserves. She doesn't even know how to play this game." Miles took a long sip from his glass. The tension was becoming unbearable. He felt torn, like he was being pulled in two directions. Claire had her own interests, and yet, the way she spoke made him question things he had never thought to doubt before. But as he looked at Sasha, who was laughing with Lily across the yard, something inside him hardened. This wasn't about him. It was about Lily. The more time passed, the more evident it became that Sasha was a threat. The women began to use more subtle methods of manipulation. They started telling lies, planting rumors, and using every opportunity to paint Sasha in a bad light. It started with whispers. Miranda, always the queen of social gatherings, was the first to spread the word. She carefully orchestrated the narrative, making sure that every word, every glance, was calculated. "Did you hear what happened last night?" Miranda said to Olivia one evening, as they both sat at the grand table, sipping wine. "I overheard Sasha talking to Lily about things she shouldn't know about, things that are way above her head. She's trying to manipulate that little girl into thinking she's her real mother." Olivia shook her head. "You think that's going too far?" Miranda smirked. "Nothing is too far when it comes to the game we're playing." By now, the seeds had been planted. Every time Sasha came into the room, the women subtly distanced themselves from her. They found ways to undermine her, hoping that their underhanded tactics would eventually force her out. The rumors were beginning to take their toll on Miles. At first, he had dismissed them as nothing more than jealous gossip. But the more he heard, the more he began to second-guess his decision. Maybe Sasha wasn't as perfect for Lily as he had believed. After all, what did Sasha know about raising a child in this world? Could she really provide the stability and structure that Lily needed? The pressure was mounting, and the last thing he wanted was to make the wrong decision. He had spent years building an empire, and now his family, his daughter's future, seemed to be hanging by a thread. He called a private meeting with Sasha late one night, after the house had settled down for the evening. "Sasha," he began, his voice soft but firm, "I need to talk to you. There are things happening in this house that you need to know about." Sasha looked up from her work, her expression unreadable. She was used to dealing with difficult situations, but something in Miles' tone told her this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. "Is something wrong?" she asked carefully, her eyes searching his face. Miles hesitated for a moment before speaking. "The women, they've been talking. There are rumors, Sasha. I need to know if they're true. I need you to be honest with me." Sasha's heart raced. She had suspected that the women were spreading lies, but hearing it from Miles made it real. She swallowed, holding her ground. "What rumors, exactly?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the panic rising inside her. "They're saying you're trying to turn Lily against them," Miles said quietly. "That you're trying to manipulate her." Sasha felt the familiar sting of anger but didn't let it show. "I've never done that, Miles. You know I haven't." He looked into her eyes, as if searching for something. I want to believe you, Sasha. But you have to understand, I have to think about Lily's future. I have to make sure I'm making the right choice for her. Sasha stood up, her frustration barely contained. And I am the right choice for her. I've been here when no one else was. You know that, Miles. You know how much I care for her. Miles didn't respond immediately. He didn't know what to say. But deep down, he knew Sasha was right. The love she had for Lily was real. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't calculated. It was genuine. But how could he explain that to a group of women who had already made up their minds about who belonged in this family? The next day, while the tension in the house continued to build, Lily came running to Sasha in the kitchen. Her small face was twisted with worry, her voice barely above a whisper. Why do they hate you, Sasha? She asked, her eyes wide with confusion. They don't want you here. They say bad things about you. Sasha knelt down to Lily's level, her heart breaking at the child's words. Lily, sweetie, people sometimes say things when they're afraid. But I'm here for you. I always will be. Lily clutched onto Sasha, holding her tight. I don't want them to make you leave. You're my real mom now. The words hit Sasha like a freight train. She didn't expect Lily to say that. But it was clear, Lily had made her choice. But as Sasha held Lily close, she knew the fight was far from over. The women wouldn't give up easily. And neither would she. In the midst of everything, a hidden weapon emerged, Lily's journal. The little girl had started writing down her thoughts every night, an innocent way to process everything that was happening. But what she didn't realize was that her words could be the key to exposing the women's manipulation. One evening, while Sasha was helping Lily with her homework, she accidentally knocked over a stack of books, revealing the journal hidden beneath. Curiosity took over, and Sasha flipped it open. What she read took her breath away. Lily's honest thoughts about the women, her confusion over their actions, and her growing trust in Sasha were all laid bare on those pages. The journal was the key. It was time to turn the tide. The mansion was filled with the subtle sound of whispers, almost as if the walls themselves were listening in on the schemes unfolding. The women were getting bolder. They were pushing further, using every opportunity to make Sasha's position seem precarious. But the truth was, Sasha wasn't backing down. She had spent days carefully observing Lily and noticing the small things that mattered the most. The way Lily smiled when Sasha entered the room, how her eyes lit up when Sasha told her stories about growing up in a small town. Sasha was becoming more than just a caretaker. She was becoming the mother Lily had been longing for. One afternoon, after Lily had been playing in the garden, Sasha sat in the study, reviewing some paperwork when she felt something shift in the air. The door opened, and it was Miles. His face was more serious than she had ever seen. Sasha, we need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Sasha stood up, sensing something was wrong. What's going on, Miles? He took a deep breath, as if bracing himself. It's about Lily's journal. She's been writing things that, honestly, I didn't expect. Sasha's heart skipped a beat. She had discovered Lily's journal days ago. The pages were filled with raw emotions, Lily's thoughts about the women, her confusion over their actions, and most importantly, how she felt about Sasha. There was no denying it now, Lily had chosen her. What did she write? Sasha asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her hands were trembling slightly. Miles hesitated before responding. She said you're the one she wants to stay with. That you're the one who makes her feel safe, that you're her real mother. Sasha's breath caught in her throat. She had suspected it, but hearing Miles confirm it hit her harder than she expected. He looked at her, his face unreadable. I don't know what to do, Sasha, he confessed. The other women, they won't stop. They're relentless. And I'm torn. Sasha's heart ached, but she kept her composure. You don't have to be torn, Miles. You know who Lily needs. You know who she trusts. But I have to think about her future, too, Miles said, running his hands through his hair in frustration. The world we live in, it's not simple. There are things she'll need that you. Sasha cut him off gently. I'm not perfect, Miles. But I know how to love her. I've been there when no one else has. That's what matters. Miles looked at her long and hard. I just don't know what's best for her anymore. Sasha nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Then let her decide. Let Lily decide who she wants. Because I'm not going anywhere. The decision had been made, or at least, it seemed to be. But what was meant to be a moment of clarity quickly turned bitter. The women, sensing they were losing their grip, began to escalate their efforts. It started with small things, furtive glances, the cold shoulder when Sasha entered a room, but soon, it became more deliberate. One evening, during a dinner party that Miles had insisted on hosting, the tension in the room was unbearable. It was late one evening when the breaking point came. Miles had been distant for days, caught in the middle of the storm. The tension between him and the women had only worsened. He was becoming more withdrawn, conflicted between his loyalty to the women who had been in his life for years and his growing awareness of the bond Sasha had with Lily. Sasha stood by the window, staring out at the night sky. She was trying to calm herself, but the weight of everything was starting to feel unbearable. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Miles entering the room. Miles, she said softly, almost in a whisper. We need to talk. He met her gaze, his face tense. I know. I'm sorry. I've been distant. Sasha's heart sank. She had expected him to apologize, but hearing it only reminded her of how far they had drifted apart. We're not getting any closer, Miles. You're still letting them manipulate you. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked toward her, his hands stuffed into his pockets. It's not that simple, Sasha. You know that. They're my friends. I've known them for years. And they're right about one thing, I need to think about Lily's future. Sasha shook her head. You're letting them control you. You're letting them convince you that I'm not the right choice. But what does Lily need, Miles? She needs love. She needs someone who is here for her, not someone playing a game for a prize. He looked at her, guilt creeping into his eyes. I don't know what's best anymore. I'm lost. Sasha's voice was steady but firm. Then let her decide. Lily knows what she needs. She knows who she trusts. For the first time, Miles hesitated. What if I'm wrong? Sasha reached out, placing her hand on his arm. If you're wrong, then we fix it. Together. But don't make a decision based on what they want. Make it based on what Lily needs. As the days dragged on, Sasha continued to face the onslaught of the women's schemes. They were relentless. The rumors about her were growing, becoming more elaborate and more malicious. Each day felt like a new battle, but Sasha was holding on. She had to. Lily was depending on her. One evening, after dinner, Miles sat in the living room with the women, discussing the situation. Claire, Sarah, Miranda, and Olivia were all present, their eyes trained on him, waiting for a decision. I think it's time we make a choice, Claire said, her tone smooth but firm. We all know what's best for this family. And Sasha, well, she's nodded. Sarah nodded in agreement. She's not equipped to handle this life, Miles. She's never been a part of your world. She doesn't know how to fit in. Miles felt the pressure mounting. He had never been good at these confrontations. His mind was swirling, torn between the weight of their arguments and the reality of the situation. But he couldn't ignore the one thing that kept pulling at his heart. I understand your concerns, he said, looking at each of them. But there's something you're not seeing. Sasha isn't trying to fit in. She's trying to be there for Lily in a way that none of you can. The women exchanged glances, a flicker of disbelief crossing their faces. You don't know what you're talking about, Olivia finally spoke up. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. This isn't just about love, this is about stability. Miles stood up, the decision in his eyes. It's about what's best for Lily. And right now, Sasha is exactly what she needs. There was a stunned silence. For a moment, no one knew how to respond. But Claire was the first to break the tension. You're making a huge mistake, Miles, she said, her voice low and dangerous. You'll regret this. But Miles didn't flinch. I'm not doing this for any of you. I'm doing it for Lily. The following day, the tension in the house reached a boiling point. Claire and the others were furious. They weren't going to let Sasha win this easily. They had made their move, and now it was time for them to escalate. As Sasha entered the kitchen, she was met by a cold, cutting glare from Sarah. We need to talk, Sarah said, her voice dripping with hostility. Sasha felt a chill run down her spine. She had a bad feeling, but she didn't let it show. What is it, Sarah? We know what you're doing, Sarah sneered. You think you're going to come in here and steal everything from us? From Miles? From Lily? Sasha stood tall, refusing to be intimidated. I'm not here to steal anything. I'm here because I care about Lily. And you know what? I think she's the one who should be making the decision. Not you. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're naive if you think they're going to let you win. Miles is weak. He'll cave. He always does. Sasha's heart pounded in her chest. The manipulation, the lies, it was all so clear now. But she refused to back down. I don't need anyone's approval but Lily's, Sasha said firmly, turning to leave. I'm done with this game. The following days were tense. Every time Sasha saw the women, they tried to undermine her. But she was no longer backing down. This wasn't just about winning a contest. This was about creating a home for Lily, about offering her the love and stability she truly needed. One evening, after the women had made their final attempt to discredit her, Miles came to find Sasha. He didn't say anything at first, but just seeing the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. I'm sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've been so lost. But you were right. It wasn't about me. It was about Lily. Sasha's breath caught. So you've made your decision? Miles nodded. It's her decision. And I know what Lily wants. She's chosen you. Sasha felt a weight lift off her chest. This wasn't about status or wealth. It was about the love they had built together. And now, she was finally being given the chance to fight for it. Lily walked into the room, her small hand gripping Sasha's. Mom, Lily whispered, her voice full of certainty. I knew you'd stay. And that was it. That was the moment that everything changed. The house was eerily quiet. Sasha knew something was coming, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The women had been quiet for days, their usual manipulative whispers replaced with cold stares. The calm before the storm. Miles had made his choice. He'd finally admitted that Sasha was the one Lily needed. But he knew the women wouldn't accept that easily. They had already started to plan their next move, desperate to salvage their place in the family and secure their standing with Miles. The confrontation was inevitable. Sasha was walking down the hallway when she noticed Claire standing near the door, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She was waiting. Waiting for Sasha to make the first move, as she always did. You think it's over? Claire said, breaking the silence. You think you've won? Sasha stopped in her tracks, a small smile tugging at her lips. It's not about winning. It's about what's right for Lily. Claire scoffed. You think you can just come in here and take everything from us? You think we'll let you destroy what we've built? Sasha's gaze didn't waver. What you've built is a lie. I'm not here to destroy anything. I'm here to be the mother Lily deserves. Claire's expression darkened. You think you can outplay us? We've been playing this game for years. We won't let you get away with this. Sasha stepped closer, not backing down. The only game I'm playing is the one where Lily gets to have the love and support she needs. As the days passed, the women's subtle sabotage continued. But Sasha was starting to feel like she had nothing left to lose. The women were relentless, their attempts to discredit her becoming more elaborate by the day. They were trying to convince Miles that Sasha wasn't the right choice for Lily, that she wasn't capable of giving her the life she deserved. But Sasha had something they didn't, genuine love for Lily. And that was something money, status, and manipulation couldn't replace. One evening, as the house prepared for another formal dinner, the tension between everyone was almost unbearable. The women were noticeably more distant, and Sasha could feel their eyes on her as she walked through the halls. It was as though they were waiting for her to slip up, for her to make one mistake that they could use to tear her down. It was then that Sasha overheard them. I don't know how much longer we can let this go on, Olivia's voice echoed in the hallway. We need to act fast before Miles gets any more attached to her. Miranda's voice followed. We have to make sure Sasha doesn't get too comfortable. If we play our cards right, she'll make a mistake. And when she does, we'll be ready. Sasha's heart raced. She had known this was coming, but hearing it confirmed made her stomach churn. They weren't going to let her have this. They weren't going to let her be part of Lily's life without a fight. Sasha didn't hesitate. She stormed into the room, confronting them head-on. You're not going to win, she said firmly, her voice steady but filled with determination. I'm not backing down. Lily deserves better than this. The women looked at her, their expressions unreadable. Claire was the first to speak. You think you've got it all figured out? You don't belong here. You never will. Sasha's voice didn't falter. Maybe I don't belong in your world, but I belong with Lily. And that's all that matters. The room fell silent. For a brief moment, everything seemed to stop. Then, Miles entered the room. His face was serious, his eyes locked on Sasha. Enough, he said, his voice calm but firm. I've heard enough. We're done with this game. Sasha turned to him, her heart in her throat. Miles, you don't have to do this. You know what's best for Lily. Miles took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the women. No more games. No more lies. I've made my decision. Sasha is the one who's been there for Lily. I won't let you tear this apart. The women's faces shifted from anger to disbelief. Claire's lip curled into a sneer, but Miles didn't look away. This ends now, he added, his voice resolute. With Miles' declaration, the power dynamic shifted. The women had lost. But the consequences were far from over. The following days were filled with tension as the fallout from the confrontation began to take hold. The women, once so confident in their positions, were now scrambling to salvage their reputations and standing. The public fallout was swift, with their social circles beginning to distance themselves. Claire's charity work was questioned after a reporter uncovered some financial discrepancies. Sarah faced a scandal when an ex-employee of her company leaked details about her treatment of staff. Olivia's design business started losing clients as word spread about her involvement in the sabotage. And Miranda's media empire crumbled under the weight of the manipulation they had orchestrated. It wasn't just about Sasha anymore. It was about the exposure of their true selves, people who had hidden behind their wealth and status, only to be undone by their own lies and manipulation. As the women's influence waned, Miles and Sasha began to rebuild what had been torn apart. It wasn't easy. The scars of the battle were still fresh, but they were determined to create a stable and loving environment for Lily. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Lily looked up at Sasha, her small hand resting in hers. "Are you really going to stay?" Lily asked, her voice filled with hope. Sasha smiled softly, her heart full. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise." Miles, sitting next to them, looked over at Sasha, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and love. "You've done more than I could ever ask for," he said quietly. Sasha turned to him, her eyes locking with his. "I'm just doing what's right for Lily." And as they sat there, as a family, Sasha realized that she had finally found her place. Not just in their home, but in Lily's heart. And that was all that mattered. The following weeks were filled with a strange, almost surreal quiet. It was the calm after the storm. The women, once so powerful, so dominant, were now nowhere to be seen. Their connections, their influence, had all but evaporated. It was as though the mansion had been washed clean of their toxicity. For Miles, the weight of his decision was slowly lifting. It was hard at first, to silence the doubts that still crept in. He had always been a man who valued logic, who trusted in facts and figures, not in feelings. But Sasha had shown him a side of life he had forgotten, the power of unconditional love, the strength of standing by what's right, even when it's hard. One evening, as the sun set over Los Angeles, Miles found himself sitting with Sasha and Lily in the garden, a sense of peace finally settling over him. The tension that had ruled the house for so long had faded, replaced by a calm that felt earned and real. Lily ran past them, chasing a butterfly, her laughter filling the air. Sasha looked at Miles, a quiet smile on her face. "It feels right, doesn't it?" she asked softly. Miles nodded, watching Lily's carefree spirit. "Yeah, it does. This is what I've been missing. This is what matters." Sasha looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I'm not going anywhere, Miles. I'm here for you. I'm here for Lily." And for the first time, Miles truly believed it. Sasha had fought for them. She had fought for their family when no one else would, and now they were stronger for it. The following months brought a new sense of normalcy to the Turner household. It wasn't perfect, there would always be scars left by the struggles they had endured, but the love they shared was real, and that was enough to heal the wounds. Sasha and Miles began to rebuild their lives together, taking small steps toward a future that was brighter than anything they had imagined. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about the bond they shared, the love that had grown between them, and the family they were creating. Lily thrived in this new environment, her happiness radiating through every room of the house. She had found her place, and with that, she found a sense of security and peace that had been missing for so long. But it wasn't just Lily who had grown. Miles, too, had changed. He had learned to trust his heart, to let go of the need for perfection and embrace the imperfections that made their family unique. One afternoon, while Lily was at school, Miles sat down with Sasha in the living room, the place where their journey had started. It had been a long road, filled with struggles and triumphs, but they had made it. "I want you to know something," Miles began, his voice sincere. "When I first made the decision to invite those women into our lives, I thought I was doing what was best for Lily. But I was wrong. I didn't see what was right in front of me." Sasha looked at him, her eyes soft. "You made the right decision, Miles. You did what was best for her. You listened to your heart." Miles smiled, a hint of regret in his eyes. "I did. But I was so caught up in what I thought was best for her that I didn't realize what she really needed was someone who loved her. Someone who wasn't afraid to stand by her, no matter what." Sasha reached for his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "We've both learned a lot. But in the end, we got it right. We're here. Together." Miles leaned back, a sense of relief washing over him. "I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd find someone like you. But now I can't imagine my life without you, without Lily." Sasha smiled, her heart full. I feel the same way. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with a peace that hadn't been there before. There was no more uncertainty, no more second-guessing. They were where they were meant to be. A few months later, a letter arrived at the Turner mansion, an invitation to an exclusive event hosted by one of the women from Miles' past. It was a grand affair, one that had once been a symbol of Miles' old world. At first, the idea of attending seemed tempting, a chance to reconnect with the people who had once been so influential in his life. But as he looked at Sasha, sitting across from him, their daughter playing nearby, he realized something. "We don't need that world anymore," he said, more to himself than to her. Sasha looked up, her eyes meeting his. "No, we don't. We've built something far more valuable than anything that world could offer us." And just like that, they knew the decision had already been made. They didn't need the approval of others. They didn't need to chase after power, status, or validation. What they had built together, was enough. It was everything. Lily came running into the room, her face bright with excitement. "Mom, Dad, look. I made a picture for you." She handed them a drawing, a simple sketch of their family, standing together in a heart. Miles and Sasha looked at each other, their hearts swelling with love for the little girl who had brought them all together. "This is perfect," Miles said, his voice thick with emotion. Sasha nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It is." As the years passed, the Turner family continued to grow stronger, and the mansion that had once echoed with tension was now filled with laughter and warmth. Miles and Sasha had built a life based on love and trust, and that was all that mattered. Their story wasn't perfect, and it wasn't always easy. But it was theirs. A story of redemption, of standing up for what was right, and of choosing love over everything else. And in the end, that's all that truly mattered. The Turner family's journey was a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles we face are not against external forces, but within ourselves. It's about learning to trust, to love without conditions, and to build a future based on what truly matters, family. Sasha, Miles, and Lily had found their happiness. They had made the choice to create a family based on love, not on power or influence. And in the end, it was love that won.